Here's a chart that James sent me a couple nights ago that looks at job growth since the pandemic. And the data comes from ADP, so it's a reputable data source. The idea here is that since the beginning of the pandemic, where we saw, really all businesses take a hit at the start of the pandemic when it came to their jobs, but small business in particular really took a hit in terms of job creation. There's academic research out there that talks about how quickly so many small businesses, your local restaurants, those kind of things, really fell apart within a couple of weeks of the pandemic and the artificial kind of demand destruction that the government had to do to keep everybody safe in a way. And as a result, I think a lot of the job market kind of dynamics that we're seeing today are a perpetuation or we're looking at kind of the tail end of a lot of those decisions that were made early in the pandemic. So, looking at the chart here, we saw that it didn't take long for big corporations, so plus 500 plus employee corporations, to make up all the jobs that were lost at the start of the pandemic. And since, it looks like around February 2021, big business has just been on the tear in terms of job growth. If your stock portfolio looked like this, you'd be very, very happy. And then on the flip side, you've got small business, which is just kind of falling apart. There's just been negative, growth over time, and it's just kind of this increasing negative growth over time. James and I we're writing a book right now that comes out in January 2023, and it's a guide for small businesses and entrepreneurs that are looking to kind of make it. We take a lot of our experience growing businesses and consulting on businesses, and we put it into some practical tips. And one of the things that we look at is small business dying in the U.S.? Do we have the infrastructure in place right now to support small business? To me, this is probably beyond my pay grade. Is a bit above kind of my real knowledge here, but when you see big corporations have this kind of job growth, and you think about all the stuff that's happening in the background, think about the Great Resignation, think about, I read an article earlier this week on the Wall Street Journal that talked about this still being a good time to change jobs because of the wage growth that you can get. If everybody in this country, at least, and I say everybody, as a blanket term, but if most people shift from working at small businesses to big corporations, and we don't do anything from an antitrust standpoint to protect competition, what we're going to see is that everybody goes to Google, everybody goes to Amazon, everybody goes to these massive corporations, and then the power consolidates, of course, at those big businesses. And then your scrappy entrepreneur who has a dream, who wants to build an e-commerce business, who wants to do really anything on the internet, you end up it becomes this place where you can't do it anymore because all the best minds are at big business, all the manpower is at big business, and it just sucks all the oxygen out of the ecosystem in terms of a healthy business ecosystem. Over time, I think small business makes up something like half of the jobs, I think, historically in America. And if we're starting to see this wedge kind of form and big businesses or big corporations are starting to take up all the talent, it just doesn't seem like a good ecosystem. And then it also doesn't really do much for, the health of the economy. We're seeing, I think I did an episode on this a day ago or 2 days ago, where even the CEO of Google, Sundar Pichai, is talking about how it's thinking about ways that it can, as a company, find 20% more efficiency. Times have been very good for workers over the last 2 years. Take away inflation, take away all these other kind of macro factors. Wages are up because the talent pool is so tight that companies have to pay wages that are above market, maybe, and just to keep hold of people. You think about all the churn that's happened with the Great Resignation. Everybody changes jobs, 4 million quits every month kind of thing. Companies are just having to pay more and more money, and small business in that world can't compete. If you just can't compete with a balance sheet of an Apple or a Google. All these companies that can they just have so much profit and so much cash that they can throw it around at talent and see what sticks, and again suck kind of all the air out of the system. So this is a very concerning graph, I think, when you think about business in America. And then from an employer brand standpoint, I'll bring it back to something that we know a lot about here at Daggerfinn. I mean, from an employer brand standpoint, you've got to think, well, how can small businesses compete? What can they offer, the labor market that makes it so that it seems better than working at a big corporation? And there are different ways to go about it. You got to tap into the intrinsic motivations of certain kinds of cohorts of people. And do people care about childcare more than they care about salary? Do they care about commute time? There's different ways to get around it, and you just got to do kind of big market research and big analysis around what people in your area are looking for, what your target market's looking for. Make sure that you have those things in place and as an employer value proposition. But on an aggregate level, I think this is a very concerning chart. If we don't do what we can to support small businesses in their pursuit of getting better and better talent, because it looks like big corporations are just running away with everything at this point.